Does a country seceding from a large multinational union sound interesting to you? The economic and political effects of that, the fallouts? No takers? Trust me, I didn't think it was super interesting at first, but I've done a lot of research on this topic. I've studied a lot of peer reviewed articles and library articles, and I think that Brexit or the British exit might be more interesting than once thought. Um, like I said, I'm not exactly a history buff, but I feel as though I've done enough research on this topic to come today and present to you what Brexit is, why I think it happened, and why I think trade ended up factoring into it more than people think. So let's start out with what is Brexit. So Brexit is the British exit of the United Kingdom from the European Union on January 31st in the year 2020. The vote was very slim. I believe it was between 53 and 54% for Brexit, so very slim margin of victory there. And it's pretty significant because the European Union was the first of 28 EU countries to leave the Union in 47 years of existence. All right, so moving on to some of the causes of Brexit. One of the major causes, it seems, of Brexit is austerity. And if you don't know what austerity is, that's all right. It's a pretty simple concept. It's political economic policies where the government will cut spending and increase taxes to get up on their money a little bit. Obviously, not super favorable with the common folk. So during this period of time, in 2004 to 2014, the United Kingdom's Independence Party, which is like a political party that's pretty against austerity, saw their vote shares increase by 11%. They went from 15.6% to 26.6% in just 10 years, which is a pretty astronomical skyrocket. Also, there is evidence to suggest, coming from did austerity cause Brexit, that regions with higher levels of austerity had higher votership for the United Kingdom Independence Party, which would eventually lead to Brexit. Now, we can get to trade and why I think trade factors into this whole ordeal. Just a little base statistic from Brexit, Trade and Defense. Nearly 40% of all World Trade Organization disputes relate to trade defense measures, which seem to not be super protected in the period leading up to Brexit. We could see this in a rise of Chinese imports to the country from 1% to 8.6%, spanning from 1998 to 2007, coming from the Global Competition and Brexit Report. So there was a considerable amount of Chinese imports coming into the country at a much higher rate than ever before, displacing some people from work, and then on top of austerity, it's easy to see how things snowballed into one another, and we got Brexit. People that lived outside of the UK and didn't really face much austerity were not so much for Brexit, but there was research to be shown that the closer you live to austerity or a condition similar to austerity, the higher likelihood you would be sympathetic to the European Union. And that comes from EU 27's public opinion on Brexit. So, one final fact, Brexit has had a global impact and it's been very impactful in the European area, as seen in some countries' GDPs growing up to 10% at risk in the case of Germany, 5.4% in the Netherlands. So countries in the area were substantially shaken up by this, and that was in the event of a hard Brexit exit. All right, so that was a lot of information to throw at you at once, and I'm sure some of that probably went over your head, which is okay, but the main points of that were Brexit was the British exit of the United Kingdom, leaving the European Union after almost half a century with them. A lot of the causes were austerity or ramping political tensions because there were tax increases and budget spending cuts. And I think that trade has factored into this whole ordeal because of the United Kingdom's increase in imports, specifically from China. I hope you've picked up some useful information from this today, and if nothing else, I hope that you, at bare minimum, know what Brexit is now and have some semblance of why it happened.